Good morning, everybody. You are listening to K-Talk Radio, 1640 AM. This is the show Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki, and our very special guest is Nudia Rivera. Thank you, Nudia, for joining me today.
Good morning.
Hey.
I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
So, guys, you are in for a special treat because I have a feeling that many of you are going to be inspired. It's a good story. I don't know the whole story, but I'm about to find out a lot of the story.
Yes.
You know, my parents were immigrants to this country, and my dad came from Japan on a boat back then. They came on a boat. I think he said the boat ride from Japan to America was about 30 days, right?
Wow.
Now we get on a plane and we're here in like 13 hours, right?
A lot shorter.
And he came to this country with $200 in his pocket. And, you know, since then he's done pretty well. He's been able to put me and my sister through college. We've lived a comfortable life. And him and my mom are, you know, they sold their business. They were supposed to retire, but he loves what he does so much that he hasn't retired yet. And so I find their story very inspiring. And it reminds me from what you shared with me the other day, kind of very similar. And my mom's from Mexico. I don't know if I ever told you that. My dad came from Japan. My mom's from Jalapa, Veracruz. My dad's from...
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You're Hispanic too.
Yes. So they met in Salt Lake City at West High School in English class at night school. That's how they met. Trying to both learn English.
That's so awesome. That's cute.
Yeah. So you guys are going to be inspired because Nudia has a story that is one of coming here at the age of 11. Right?
Yes.
And not knowing English as your native language, but now today she's killing it as an entrepreneur. And I always tell kids, you know, people that come to me and say, hey, listen, I'm thinking about what I want to do after college, but life is so tricky, life is so tough, this and that, and they're born here in this country, and I'm like, listen, buddy, you have it so good. You have no idea how good you have it. And I start telling them stories of you know Elizabeth Cordero. I know her story a little bit, and I'll share, you know, her story, my parents' story, and then they start to realize, yeah, I really have everything that I could possibly need, including, which you and I didn't have growing up, the internet, you know, and to be able to go out there and succeed. So, if you don't mind, Nudia, diving into a little bit about your story in the beginning.
Yeah, so I was born in Mexico. My father's Mexican and my mom's Spanish.
Oh. Hey,
Yeah.
my grandpa's Spanish.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, my grandma's Mexican. Yeah.
And so we moved to the United States when I was 11 years old, and coming to this country was quite the difference in culture, and everything was different about the United States. And all of the things that I ever knew of this country were pretty much from like movies or Hollywood, and you know, and I knew certain words, just small words, and maybe how to say like what's your name, something like that. So we arrived here when I was 11, and I just remember that even the school system was so different. You could go to school and get lunch here. Yeah. You know, in Mexico it was like, you don't get lunch. You take your lunch, or you take money to try to buy something from like the neighbor across like the school, you know, like her backyard was attached to the school, and you'd like get a burrito from her. Yeah. And so just quite the culture shock, and within a month I was able to communicate with the children. It is very true that when you're a child, you're kind of a sponge, and I think you're just not in your head, that you immerse yourself in whatever environment you're in. Right. And so I was able to communicate, not necessarily like really speak fluently, but about 6 months it took me, and I was pretty much communicating fully with my, you know, my friends, and so it was such a whole new world for me. We lived in a basement apartment in American Fork, Utah. Oh, nice. And had a great neighborhood friends, and I really truly loved the American, you know, just life. Yeah. I remember going with my sister, jumping on a tramp for the first time, and we were laughing hysterically. That's awesome. Like, oh, we've only seen trampolines in like circus shows, you know, and we didn't know that this was like a toy. Right. And we were just dying laughing, like of joy of being able to jump on a tramp. So just the little things that you take for granted, perhaps. when you haven't experienced otherwise. But
Yes.
yeah, growing up, my parents did the best they could, obviously being an immigrant family.
Sure.
I'm so blessed and grateful that we never had anything that was a need that wasn't met. You know, we had a roof over our heads, we always had food, but with that also there were very limited funds for anything extra. And so I always had the desire to like go and play basketball or go do gymnastics or do some extracurricular curricular activities. There's my accent. And there was just never enough money for things like that. And I just remember that at one point I was so upset of just hearing, no, there's no money. No, there's no money. No hay dinero. And I was like, I refuse to live my life like this. You know, and that was a big defining moment for me. And I was in middle school, and
oh, nice.
I was like, nope, this is I'm deciding right now that I'm not going to live my life like this. And I knew at that point that it was going to be up to me to make my own money or make something of myself. And so ever since then, I just started hustling, working with whatever I could, whether it was like cleaning schools, cleaning homes, babysitting, paper routes, you name it, I was doing it.
Wow.
Just to make my own money. And then in high school, I had enough credits where I could get work release. I don't know if you ever did that.
Oh, no.
But as a senior, if you had enough credits, you could like leave and actually work, and it would be allowed. And so I was like, yes, I just wanted to work. I just wanted to make money. And so I would go and do that. I paid my way through the community college. You know, it was
nice.
I had like 3 jobs at one point just so I could like go to school. So that hustle and ambition has always been within me. And I got in the real estate industry in 2006. And I got into the title and escrow side of it, became an escrow officer 6 months into it.
Nice.
Did that for 9 years, and then for a good amount of period, probably about a 4-year period, I really had an idea of really disrupting this industry, because I felt like it was so old school and boring, and everyone was doing the same thing. And here I am at the time I was like 29 years old, you know, and I was killing it. I was the top producer in my company.
Nice.
I was always, again, just outworking everyone. I didn't mind working the 12-hour days. You know, when my friends were out partying, and not that I didn't enjoy life, but I was working. You know, like the sacrifices that you make for years to get to your goals and where you want to get to. But so I just thought, you know, all these people are coming into a title company, closing on their most important asset, their most important investment, which is a home, or selling the house for the first time, and they are cashing out on their equity, and they just feel like another number when they come in here, and they just feel like they're just being pushed some paper and like, okay, next. And I just thought, there's got to be more to this industry than just this. And so for about a 4-year period, I began to really immerse myself into learning what it would take to be a business owner. Because although I was so good at my role and I was succeeding, I was top producer, I knew that there was going to be a completely different skill set to actually be able to run a business. And those things I didn't know. And so I read a ton of books. I interviewed multiple business owners within my industry, outside of my industry. I created a mastermind group, which Matt Atkinson was a part of.
I remember. And Riley.
Riley Rogers.
That's how I found out about it. I was offended.
We should have called you. So there were about 12 of us, and man, that group was so amazing, because a lot of the people in it were doing bigger things than I. You know, I was still an employee at the time. They were their own business owners, and they were really heavily investing in real estate, and they would sometimes talk about terms that were so new to me, and I had no idea what they were talking about. But what that did is that I got very uncomfortable with people that were doing bigger things than me. And you know how, do you know Jim Rohn? He's like the mentor of all mentors. And he always talks about how you are the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. And although I was the smallest fish in the sea, in a sense, in that group,
Yeah.
I started the group, and it was uncomfortable at times, because again, they were having these conversations, and I'm like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
And but I learned so much, and we really pushed each other to go for our goals, and we learned so much together, and that group lasted about 2 years.
Awesome.
And they really empowered me to just go for it, you know? And,
Yeah.
and so finally, after, studying so much about this, I was actually on my way to Washington, D.C. for a conference. And I had a layover in Denver, the Denver airport, and I was going to write down my pros and cons, whether I should stay with where I was at and continue growing, helping them grow that business, or whether I should finally launch this almost art that I had in my head. I'm very creative, like you as well. I love the arts and everything, so I'm very artistic in that way. And I'm like, what if should I finally launch this thing that's been in my head for almost 4 years
Right.
of changing this up, And all of a sudden, Yoshi, before I could write anything down, I just had this overwhelming feeling come over me.
Uh-huh.
And tears just started to come down my eyes and
Wow.
in my face, and I was like, wow, this is it.
Yeah.
I don't need to write anything down.
Yeah.
That was another defining moment for me, where it was like, okay,
Yeah.
that's all I needed. It was just bigger than me. It was more inspired.
Yes.
And I said, okay. So 6 months later, I launched Novation Title.
Nice.
And here we are 5 years later. We're
amazing.
It's been so crazy.
And you opened up another office, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah. So we have our main office is in Midvale.
Nice.
And then we have a Stansbury Park office, and I'm about to open up a third in Taylorsville. So it's been a wild ride. I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's been sleepless nights, stress,
Yes.
heartaches, heartbreaks, some people leaving that you're like, that you invest so much in, and it's just been so crazy. But I'll tell you something, what it's created out of me, and the person I've had to become,
Yes.
to get to be where I'm at, is I just wouldn't change it for the world.
Awesome. That's awesome. What an amazing story. You know what I love about the story is there's few people that I've spoken to that had this initial drive at such a young age like you. For those of you who don't know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, YouTube, search him, right? Google him.
Gary's the best.
Yes. And Gary talks about being in grade school and selling cards or whatever. He was always an entrepreneur as a young kid. Hated school. Did terrible in school. And obviously, after he got done with school, just went into the right away. Just started going into being an entrepreneur, helping his parents, and now he's huge, right? And it's interesting because I probably didn't learn to be driven, and I don't know if I don't know what the day happened when I was like, I want to do this and I was driven about it. But I was probably a young adult, after high school for sure, right? During junior high, it's so impressive to hear you say that you made that commitment and that decision at junior high. Junior high, I think I was still just trying to play baseball. Still trying to play soccer or something. So that's so impressive. Okay, so very cool.